Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Jerome Moore is on a mission. That mission is social change. The native Nashvilleian has created a platform that highlights the first step for change: conversations. Inviting people from all walks of life into his studio, Moore engages in creating connections and discussing solutions to the problem our city faces. That's what his podcast and web show, Deep Dish Conversations, is all about. Oh, and there's pizza. His process is working. He has a TV show on the Nashville Public Television, and he's a new author partnering with Vanderbilt University Press to publish a book of the memorable conversations from Deep Dish. Later this hour, we'll talk with the change agent about his life, his motivation, and discover what's next for him. But first, it's Election Day in Nashville. Since they opened at 7 a.m., voters are headed to the polls to pick new city leaders, most notably the mayor. And here to break down the ballot for us are two members of WPLN's news team. Nina Cardona is our morning host, and Rose Gilbert is our general assignment reporter. Rose and Nina, thank you for being here. Welcome back to This Is Nashville.
Thank you.
All right, so Rose, you've been out there at the polls this morning. First of all, where are you, and are you remaining dry?
Yes, I am in my car sheltering from the rainstorm, but more importantly, I am in the parking lot of the Cathedral of Praise, which is a polling spot and church in kind of northwest Nashville.
All right, so what are you seeing and hearing out there?
Yeah, so, rain puts a damper on anything, but there's been a steady stream of voters, especially as we get to people's lunch hour. People are getting off work, come here to vote. I spoke to a couple of the poll workers, and they said that this polling location in particular is kind of a long time voting location for a lot of people. They said an older community. This is a place where people come over and over again, not some place with a lot of turnover, like, say, the polls over by Belmont. Although I did talk to one younger voter who says this is only her second time voting, Amaria Patton.
Well, this is my second time voting, but I'm just here to get more familiar with my community and try to be involved and vote for the right people in council.
So Amaria was a little shy, but she took some time to talk with me, and she explained to me that this is actually a family tradition. She was there with her mother, Tanja, her father, and her brother, and her mom, Tanja, kind of explained that she felt it was really important to model voting for her kids. She brought her daughter and her son with her to the polls.
It's a tradition, and she needs to know what the history is of voting in the Black community. So people die for this right to vote. So we want to make sure that our family gets out and vote every election, no matter what.
And Tanja says she has still one daughter who's a senior in high school who's waiting to turn 18, and then she'll officially have a full family of registered voters.
A family affair. I love that, doing their civic duty. Now, you were out during early voting as well. How did that compare to today?
Yeah, I think with early voting, especially I was there on the very first day down at the Howard Building downtown, there were a lot of people who were, trying to get in as soon as possible. And also the folks who vote on the very first day of early voting are maybe extra super duper involved. So you had a lot of real tense getters out there. And of course, a lot of the folks I've run into today are also regular voters. Some people who were, maybe told me they needed a little bit more time to do some research, especially since the field of candidates is so crowded this year.
All right, Rose, your connection's a little funky. We're going to work that out. But Nina, let's talk about what's on the ballot.
All right.
How about the mayor's race?
Well, it is an incredibly crowded field. There are 11 candidates to choose from. And this hasn't been the kind of race where we can say, well, it's really just a couple of them. People have tried to say that, but they've also disagreed on which couple of candidates, Okay. So it's incredibly crowded. It's a lot to sort through.
All right, let's go down the list.
Okay, well, there are the two state senators who are running for mayor, both Democrats. Jeff Yarbrough has been the minority leader in the state Senate. Heidi Campbell was a leader in the push to deal with the problems in the Department of Children's Services. Then there are the Metro Council members who are looking for the mayor's office now. In that group, Sharon Hurt has brought a lot of focus to lifting up small businesses, particularly women and minority-owned ones. In his time on council, Freddie O'Connell has shown a lot of interest in transit and infrastructure improvements. And before she became tax assessor, Vivian Wilhoit was also on the council. She's been critical of some of the current council's moves, like giving the Republican National Convention the cold shoulder. She called that poking the bear as far as relations with the state government, which, are GOP controlled, are concerned. The other former office holder who's running for mayor is Fran Bush. She was on the Metro School Board, and she was probably the loudest voice on that body to question the decision to have kids learn from home during the pandemic. She really wanted to get them back in schools. Then there are the mayoral candidates who've been in the political and public service world, but in a less public fashion. So Matt Wiltshire was the head of economic development for the city, and he has worked a lot in the area of housing as well. Alice Rowley was a staffer in Governor Bill Haslam's administration. She worked on the re-election campaign for another Republican, Senator Lamar Alexander. And beyond that, a few political newcomers round out the race. Bernie Cox and Stephanie Johnson are entrepreneurs. Natisha Brooks is a retired educator who describes herself as a Christian conservative constitutionalist. And I should also mention Jim Gingrich. He's the former COO of Alliance Bernstein. And you'll see his name on the ballot today, but he has dropped out of the race.
So many candidates.
It is. But that has increasingly just become the way of Nashville mayoral elections. I mean, it seems like every cycle, there are more and more, and it winnows out less and less in just kind of a natural fashion during the campaign. It's basically become a given the last several times around that a mayoral race will be decided in a runoff. It looks certain that's going to happen this time. It's hard, though, because this time around, the various forums around the city just didn't really work like they have in the past to differentiate things between the candidates or make a definite front runners pull out ahead of the pack. Now, most of these candidates have answered questions from WPLN News on the big issues, and folks who are still trying to decide who to vote for can read all of that at WPLN.org. But it'll be interesting to see how things shake out today and who's going to go to the runoff.
It says something when so many people want to be mayor. I guess that's a good thing. Okay, so beyond the mayor's race, what's on the ballot?
Well, there's the vice mayor. And I know you did a deep dive into that race here on this show. And I'd encourage people to go back and listen to that. But basically, you can think of the vice mayor as like the local equivalent of the Speaker of the House or Senate. We've got Jim Schulman, who moved into the vice mayor's role in 2018, and he's held it ever since. He has led the council while the city churned through 3 mayors in the past 5 years. And he's running in part on the idea that he provides an element of stability to be reelected. His challenger, Angie Henderson, is a council member, and she's seeing how things run there now, and she has notes. She wants to do things a little differently to make sure that a wide variety of voices are included.
Council seats are up for grabs too, right?
Yes, and that's a very long list. We have 40 members on the council. I'm not going to go through all of that. But depending on where you live, there's a district council race, and then the county as a whole picks 5 at-large members. And there are also, I should note, 2 special elections that some people will be voting in to fill seats in the state legislature. Those will show up on ballots in just the handful of applicable precincts. So this is to decide if Justin Jones will permanently keep his seat in the state house. Of course, he's one of the Tennessee 3 who were expelled. He was expelled and then temporarily brought back into the legislature. But this makes it official if he wins over his Republican challenger today. And then we've got primaries to fill the seat of Representative Bill Beck, who died suddenly of a heart attack in June.
So when you look at today's ballot as a whole, what would you say is at stake?
I mean, Nashville's in a really interesting moment. I have lived here most of my life, and I can honestly say that I don't ever remember seeing the relationship between the city and the state be anywhere near as strained as it is right now. I mean, we're in the middle of multiple lawsuits between Nashville and the state of Tennessee, and whoever voters pick today and in next month's mayoral runoff, that's essentially the team that's going to pick the strategy and the approach for the city side of what has become this very high stakes back and forth. And then these are also the leaders who are going to make the choices as the East Bank redevelopment plan starts to transition from a big idea to a detailed plan. Same for rebuilding 2nd Avenue. They're going to be the ones deciding whether to redevelop the Fairground Speedway. And of course, the perpetually urgent issues, transit, homelessness, affordable housing, policing, things like that. And who knows what surprises may be in store because, I mean, if you think about it, 4 years ago, our current mayor, John Cooper, ran on a platform that was designed for a Nashville that only kind of exists now. I mean, we had a tornado, a pandemic, a budget crisis, a bombing downtown, a school shooting. Hopefully things are going to be a lot calmer for the next mayor.
Hopefully.
Whoever it turns out to be. But one way or another, there will be curveballs. And so today, it's our job as voters to pick who we think will be able to pivot and provide the leadership the city needs, whatever surprises come along.
Go out there in the rain and make it happen. So,
Yeah.
Rose and Nina, I have to ask you, have you voted yet?
Later today,
I'm headed out right now. Yeah.
it is a tradition. I always vote on election day with my husband, and now we love having my 21-year-old son's going to be going with us today as well.
So you've got a family affair as well.
Yeah, and we always see familiar faces running our local poll. Khalil, how about you?
No, I will be doing that later on today as well before the polls close at
7 o'clock. 7
Okay.
o'clock, and then we've got some special newscasts tonight after that on WPLN.
Rose Gilbert is WPLN's general assignment reporter, and Nina Cardona is the local host of Morning Edition. Thanks to you both for being here, and happy Election Day.
Thank you.
We have to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk with podcast host Jerome Moore about his show Deep Dish Conversations and why he dedicated himself to creating social change. Are you a fan of Deep Dish Conversations? Tell us about it and tweet us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. My guest today is a rising voice in the arena of social change, whose work is shaped by his roots and sense of identity. Jerome Moore grew up in North Nashville, where he saw firsthand the inequalities of our nation and city. So he set himself on the path to do something about it. After spending time overseas serving in the Peace Corps, he came back to his hometown to engage with people in the two things humans do most: talk and eat. He created the podcast web show Deep Dish Conversations, where he sits with political leaders, organizers, activists, artists, and many others. They talk about social change while enjoying a slice of pizza. He expanded his platform to on the flat screen and in print, creating the show A Slice of Nashville in collaboration with Nashville Public Television, and he's authored his first book with Vanderbilt University Press. Where does he see social change in Nashville? Well, he joins me now. Jerome Moore, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Look, I appreciate it, Khalil, man. I'm excited. I'm really excited about this. This is Nashville. I'm from Nashville. I'm ready to get this thing rocking, man.
Oh, let's do it.
I'm ready to get this thing rocking. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, man, I'm so happy to have you here. So, I've just described you as this agent of social change, but looking at our city, state, country, it's kind of the culture war being waged right now. Do you see yourself as a warrior for social change?
Yeah, I'm a warrior, but also just an explorer of social change. Because I don't have all the answers, right? And I don't go into these conversations or when I would think about these things, well, I know everything, right? I know I have blind spots. I have my own implicit biases that I have to recognize and learn from. But that's what exploring helps me do. I think helps everyone does, right? It gets that diverse perspective so you can have these conversations, but also it keeps you open-minded, right? And I think where we are as a city and we are as a state, it's easy to maybe be pressured to be boxed in into thinking one way, leaning one way, when we really should all kind of be exploring so we can develop our own kind of authentic thoughts. But also you can develop empathy. You can develop personal growth and all these other things that come from intentionally exploring different perspectives, different communities, different humanities, different people. And so that's what I kind of, I'm going to explore social change, and I'm going to stick with that.
Now, yes. Okay, so you're exploring social change. You're traversing new grounds of connection with other people, particularly here in Nashville and Tennessee.
Yep.
And we have to say a lot of the issues, we have an election going on right now, and a lot of things are highly politicized.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're kind of distracting from the common struggle you were just alluding to that we all go through and the things that we're subjected to. How do you navigate these things? How do you navigate the areas of social change, the desires for change, yet at the same time really confronting, like you said, your own internal biases to learn?
Yeah, I think it's that always being a consistent learner, right? Of course, I'm going to have my own perspective on particular issues, right? And I think they can change depending on where you are in your journey in life as a human being, right? You know, from a 20-year-old to a 40-year-old, you're probably going to look at the same topics differently depending on where you are in life. And that's okay, right? So for me, I try to just stay focused on that. Try to stay focused on listening to other people, whether it may be community members, experts, journalists, This Is Nashville, or whatever it may be, right? Yeah. In developing as best as I can my own understanding of what's going on and really exploring all those other options and then coming up with a decision. Not to say my decision is going to be the best, the right one, the perfect one. It is what it is, but I think that's what I would encourage people to do is explore all the options and get outside your own silo or community bubble where most people probably are thinking like you think. And I don't know if we solve issues, right, thinking the same way maybe that the how the issues were created, thinking that way. I think we have to think a little differently than how the issues were created. And so that's my approach. And I just kind of, my lane and kind of how I do that is a little differently because I intentionally live in that space. And everybody's not thinking about social change every day, right? But I think everybody can play a part. And for me, it starts in your everyday community. Every day, it starts in the everyday community. And I think the most important thing, if I could say one of the most important thing about how I look at this and social change is always keeping it solution based. Right. I think it's easy to criticize. It's easy to point out what somebody isn't doing right. It's easy to say, man, if I was in the ball game, I would have hit a home run or would have did a 360. Right. I think that's really low hanging fruit. But I think if we can think solution based and have those discussions, regardless on what kind of political spectrum that you're on, I think we can figure out the answers to combat these social constructs that we all are affected by on different levels. Solutions based conversations and discussions. That is the essence of deep dish conversations. Yep. Where did you come up with the idea to do that? Tell me about how it was created. Oh man, we got to go back abroad. Okay. I know you mentioned my Peace Corps service, and for me, that's where it started as far as, dipping my feet in those abroad waters and really getting a sense of exploring, right? First time leaving the United States, living abroad and really immersing myself in a different community that I didn't speak the language, I wasn't familiar with. I was just here to do community economic development. And for me, that's where it all started. And that took me from there to Costa Rica. And to China is where I would say is the real catalyst of where I said, okay, there's a void out there of when it comes to solution-based projects and media being amplified, right? We always hear about the issues, the challenges. What are we going to do? But I didn't see the amplification of the people that I see every day, including myself, that was actually doing the work to solve these things that people are always talking about. So for me, that's when I said, okay, let me talk to all of these different people that I'm living amongst in China, right? That's from all across the world to figure out what is their perspective on social change. And I learned that different cultures are looking at these things differently, right? And that's what really made me explore, because I think my Americanism, and even my blackness to a degree made me think, well, if you look like me, maybe our issues are in proximity to one another. Maybe you care about policing too. Maybe you care about whiteness or whatever it may be, right? And that's not the case, right? Depending on where you are. So that was just really fascinating to me. I said, wow, I really need to explore more. But coming back home, I don't think I knew much more about my city than as I thought, because I didn't ever explore it. I was in my own black bubble growing up here. So I didn't know as much. So I was intentionally creating not a space just for myself, but also for others to explore what other community members are going through, but also how they solving these issues and how can we build power together as a city. So when you got back, you said to yourself, I want to make this, I'm going to start exploring and create this show? For sure, definitely. Who'd you talk to? Who were the first steps? I was just done it. I wrote a proposal. So when I came back, I started, got back into the community organizing with Noah, right? And then I just wrote a proposal to Geno's East Pizza and say, hey, this is what I like to do. I like to use a facility, your space to do this. They was like, cool, perfect. And then the pandemic happened, right? And so I came back from China in October, right almost going into November of 2019. Pandemic hit China in 2019 to December.
Yeah.
Then it hit us in that March of 2020 here. So I was like, man, I dodged it in China, but they caught me on the back end when I got back to Nashville.
Pandemic's fast,
yeah,
man.
Pandemics happen fast, right? And it's still not over. It's still going on, right? And so during that time, like it was the timing. It was just perfect, man. Like in a weird way, it was perfect for what I was doing, because maybe if it would have happened at a different time, maybe it wouldn't hit the same. Because we had the pandemic, Geno's East wasn't open. I could use the space, right? Right? They sponsored everything, the piece of the space, so I was able to use that, and I was able to tell guests comfortably, hey, we'll be the only ones in the restaurant. You know, we can mask up and then we can take them off for the conversation, right? We can do all these things in safe proximity to make sure everybody's safe and healthy during this pandemic. And then also during that summer, right, we had this racial reckoning with George Floyd and everything, right? So people were trying to figure out, like, what social change is, what does this mean, how can I be a part of the solution? And so as all this is going on, I'm in the creation of Deep Dish Conversations, and it just, the timing just took off for me. But also, you know, I've been doing this work for 10 plus years, like boots on the ground, actually doing community projects and solving these things, just not here in Nashville, but across the world, actually. And so I'm a literal explorer in every sense of the way, but also, like, I really care about this work, and this is the only work I've ever done.
All right, so you have this desire for exploration of social change, and
Definitely.
Deep Dish Conversations is in the oven,
Yeah,
so to
it's
speak.
cooking,
It's
baking,
cooking,
yeah.
it's making it happen. And you have these guests from seemingly every corner.
Yeah.
Of the city. You speak to mayoral candidates and that for today's election.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I'm curious, like, how do you go about selecting the guests for your show? Talk to me about that process.
It's a really low bar, right? If you're trying to create some type of social change that can positively affect our community, you can be a guest on the show.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I don't, me, myself personally, I don't get into positions or titles or anything like that. Like, we all can play a role. We all should play a role when it comes to impacting our community. And we might not always agree on how we might want to do that, but we can talk about that, right? One of the, like, I guess one of the buzz words or buzz topics when we talk about social change is policing, right? Everybody, you know, sees policing a little differently. Might want a community policing, that's different. But that doesn't mean I can't sit down and talk to a police officer or somebody that's an advocate of maybe abolishment of policing or something like that, to figure out alternative solutions or how they feel their perspective on that particular alternative can best serve our community. And so as long as you're trying to make a positive impact in a healthy way, you can be a guest on Deep Dish Conversations. And I encourage everybody to come and talk to me, because I'm exploring and I'm still learning. Again, I don't have all the answers, but and I don't have no agenda. I'm not trying to get you from the right side, the left side, the middle, whatever. Like, if you're trying to create a positive impact when it comes to social change, let's talk.
I can imagine the list to be on that show is pretty long.
I got, like, this last week I had 35 guest requests.
35 guest requests.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me one, give me one of the wildest pitches you have been sent from a guest. You can keep specific names out, but what is something that made you say, "Oh, wow, this is pretty nuts"?
Well, I had somebody. They had like a button company. This was like a while back. They had like a button company, right? And I was like, okay, cool. What do you want to, like, talk about when it comes to, like, the buttons? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how is this incorporated with what we do as far as social change and like solution-based discussions, right? And they just wanted to, like, kind of highlight their buttons and how they put faces on them and shiny, and just said, you need to have me on there. And I was like, okay, but that also helped me realize, like give me even more clear about making sure I crystallize and articulate, like, who this show is for, right? It's not, if you're a musician, it's not to come talk about your discography and, like, what your next album coming out. But if you want to talk about how your music is impacting community and hopefully influencing, like, we can talk about that portion. So being able to be crystal clear about that, and also that just keeps the fairness and everybody sees that. So now I don't get too much of those kind of like, I just kind of want to be on here to promote some type of guest requests. So, but you got to be clear about those things up front, because once you let one or two do it,
they're all coming.
It's all coming. And so but that's the bar. And so that I try to keep it, real simple, but also open to everybody on any type of level where they may be in community.
So speaking about that, you have guests from all political views, and you stand up for the facts as well. Let's listen to a little bit of your conversation with mayoral candidate Alice Rowley.
There's a lot of components, right? Just sticking on public safety.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
We have
criminalizing this state in general, right? We have criminalized homelessness, right? 30% of those incarcerated have a mental illness, right? And so as potential mayor, what are resources or what are things that we can do to combat or address things on the front end so police don't have to deal with it? Because I don't think it's necessarily a policing issue. They just end up doing the job, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. There are, I think that we know there are roughly 180 individuals in Davidson County, to your point, who, given their mental health condition, are in this in-between place.
Okay, so if you want to hear the rest of Rolly's answer, just look up Deep Dish Conversations. You can find that on podcast platforms and on YouTube. But Jerome, you decide what facts and what parts of your own point of view you want to bring into conversations like these. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the guest, right? I think sometimes there's narratives. Sometimes there's things that like that I'm just interested in and kind of want to just get their own approach and their perspective on whatever stats or facts that may come up, especially if they're going to be in some type of position of decision making, or have decision making power, right? I think it's clear for us to understand kind of where our community leaders are or feel about these particular things. And so I try to explore that. And sometimes, it goes really great and they're on board. And sometimes they have a whole different response to something that's like, hey, these are the facts, or maybe they look at it different than me. But that's the whole point, right? It's to create a brave space to have that conversation and maybe sometimes at a disagreement and carry on and still be able to have a civil relationship and civil conversation at the end of the day.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. We're talking this hour with Jerome Moore, the author, TV producer, and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. You can tweet us your comments at This Is Nashville. Now, you grew up here in North Nashville. What was the city like for you growing up as a boy becoming a young man in this town?
It was black. It was like for me, because I was in my I'm like this is really funny because we know Nashville is shifting when it comes to diversity over time, right? It'll be no leading kind of ethnicity. It'd be 33, right? But growing up here, like we know, like it was super majority white, kind of still how it is today. But growing up in my black bubble in North Nashville, which both of my parents also grew, pretty much my whole family is like North Nashville, right? And so I didn't realize kind of just like how white it really was. Right? I'm thinking everything around me is black. My church is black. My grocery store is black. All the schools, 99.9% black, right? And so that's what I thought it was, right? Growing up, and I grew up low middle class, right? Middle class in some parts in life, it fluctuated.
Yeah.
It fluctuated.
That good job of the raise.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to my mom and my daddy. But but it was fun. I had fun growing up here, right? And I, as a kid, you don't have the outlook, or you're not looking at things especially from like a social change perspective. You're just enjoying life and enjoying what's in front of you. But as I got older and started getting into this work, I started realizing like, oh wow, like this city is like very anti-black in a lot of ways too as well, right? I mean, you hear about the history, you hear about Jubilee singers, the freedom riders, you hear about my heritage, we have all this blackness, but then you hear about the interstate that went through, right? So you hear about all these things and you start to conceptualize different ideas and you start to learn about just who you are as a Nashvilleian and as a black person. For myself, and you kind of take that and you harness that, but you take that into the world with you. And so I took that into the world with me, and it just helped me learn as I traveled around the world about myself, but also about my city. And I'm a rep Nashville forever, 615 forever. But I also know like my city's not perfect. We got some, we've neglected some things historically. We still need to work on some things now. And hopefully whoever our next mayor is can help rectify some of those things and combat some of those things as we move forward. We're trying to move forward as a city.
Now, full disclosure, you and I know each other. We talked many times before, so this is really fantastic and lovely to have you here as a guest on the show. But you said something in one of our conversations. You said Nashville is diversely segregated.
Yeah, that's my term. It's diversely segregated, for sure. I need to put on the T-shirt, actually.
A button?
Yeah, a button. Yeah, for sure. Shout out to the button guy. But it's diversely segregated. If you look at Nashville, like we can still, there's a lot of diversity here, but everybody's still in their own little pockets, right? The Latinx community, API community, black, white community. We still very, very, very segregated here. And that may just be due to the South and segregation and slavery and all these things that we know just existed here. But yeah, we diversely segregated. And I don't try to fake the funk when it comes to that. I call that out like it is. But we can change that, maybe, but that takes some exploring. It takes to intentionally get out and talk to these other community members and figure out how can we, build power together and build relationships, right? And understand what each other are going through from our own kind of lenses and build the empathy by exploring and understanding different perspectives.
What's interesting to me is that you have that perspective. I mean, seeing that you've lived in Costa Rica, Paraguay, China, so you've lived in other places. You come back to your hometown that is now diversely segregated. How, it's something I haven't experienced yet. And I know a lot of Americans, African Americans, and people who specifically have lived in other countries over a period of time, more so than just kind of visited for 3 weeks. Yeah. You lived there. You ate the food. Yeah. You experienced the cultures. They say something is different. The common thread is that they kind of how they view themselves, how they relate away from the American definition of what it means to be a black person.
Sure.
What did you recognize in terms of your identity when you lived overseas? Yeah. And how did that affect your view of things when you got back to your hometown?
Yeah, definitely. It's like going overseas and being especially a black American, African American is different in many ways from being a black Ghanaian or black Nigerian. It's a little different. We get some privilege, American privilege that we don't get here in the United States, which is crazy, right? But it's like a rarity. It's like they don't think you exist, right? But then you get even deeper when we may talk to a Ghanaian brother or sister, right? Or from Uganda, wherever it may be on the continent of Africa. Right? It's like their black experience is totally different than ours, right? And that's what really shocked me a lot and let me learn more about my blackness. It's like, oh, you're not going through the same things or care about the same social issues that I care about, and we both black. And those are things that you can't read in a book. You have to explore. You have to go travel if you have the opportunity, and I encourage everybody to go travel. So coming back home gave me a whole different perspective on life. Like it just opened my mind up to a whole different realm of thinking about things and thinking about humanities, which I think, that's why I'm so curious. Which I think you can hear when I do these interviews and when I talk to people. And I just don't allow myself to be boxed in. And I think a lot of that is just due to being able to have that really true immersion experience and living in different countries.
Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jerome Moore and talk about his new TV show and book and what he envisions for the future. Join the conversation by tweeting us at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back. I'm Khalil Ekalona, and this is Nashville. We've been talking with Jerome Moore, the creator and host of Deep Dish Conversations, a podcast and web show that features people from all over Nashville as they engage in conversations about social change and sometimes pizza. Recently, Moore has expanded his platform and embarked in the world of television and print. His first book, titled Deep Dish Conversations, was released earlier this summer, and his TV show, A Slice of Nashville, debuted on Nashville Public Television at the same time. What does the future hold for him and Nashville? Jerome Moore, thank you for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Look, the TV show, A Slice of the Community.
A Slice of the Community.
Yeah, A Slice of the Community. It's all good. It's all good. I just want to make sure everybody clear on that and they ain't mad at me.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, you got to be sure about that.
Yeah, you got to be sure about that.
All right, before we get back to talking, we did get a tweet. We got a tweet at This Is Nashville from Davey Tucker who says, quote, "I didn't get a slice of pizza," end quote.
Hey, Davey understands and knows why he didn't get a slice of pizza. David, I ain't gonna even put you out on blast like that, like you try to put me out. But he knows. But if y'all not tapped into David Tucker though, he's just a powerful community leader here, pastor, organizer. And so, David, shout out to you. in the work that you're doing. But maybe I get your pizza one day.
Get him a slice.
Maybe I get you a slice or two. I don't know.
We got to get them a slice. Now, we got the mayoral election happening right now. Mm-hmm. You took time to talk to the candidates.
I did.
I just want to ask you your overall impressions of the field.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's a tough field. I think it's honestly a tough field, and we're gonna keep it all the way a buck on here. This is Nashville. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna tell you how I measured who I voted for. Right. I'm gonna tell you how I measure just people in general when I come to these things. One, I like to meet them. I like to feel like this not what they're saying. Their energy. Yeah. Right. Like how you are in just everyday routine. Right. Secondly, have I seen you before as a person that's committed to community? Like, if I haven't seen you before or if I heard about what you was doing before, like is what you're doing during the campaign, is that authentic? Or is it just for the campaign and then you'll go back to kind of doing whatever you was doing? If you wasn't running for mayor or any elected office, would you still be doing this work? Would you still be out here in the community? So these are the questions that I ask myself when I'm thinking about who I'm going to vote for, and also just their history. What if they have been in an elected office before, kind of what have they voted on, kind of how transparent they have been, because I think that's some type of inclination of what they'll do if they're elected mayor. And so that's how I take those things. And I know it's been hard with 1,000 forms and it's 11, 12, a lot of them, right? So I think kind of having the conversations like we do in that long form way where you can really take a deep dive and talk to them for an hour and 15 minutes are the best way, I think, to really evaluate these candidates. So if you haven't, tune in to Deep Dish Conversations. This is Nashville as well, to listen to those long form conversations to really find out those things. And I think an easy trick is go to their website. Those you can find real easy red flags just based off what they don't have and do have on their red site. Mm-hmm. And so if you care about transit and they don't have transit on their website, it's a red flag. Yeah. If you care about combating anti-blackness or something like that, if they don't have that on their website as a priority, maybe you should. That's an opportunity for you to ask them a question about that.
Discussing community change on your show means bringing up very difficult, sometimes difficult personal things.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to play a little bit from your conversation with Chef Star May, the executive chef at Anise Blue in Hillsborough Village. She talks about working long hours in her first restaurant jobs and the effect it had on her and her son.
I was a single mother, you know what I'm saying, trying to raise a child and work 90 hours a week. How you do that? Crappy mom. That's how you do it. You can't be the best that you want to be because you got to feed them, you got to clothe them, you got to give them where they got to go. So it was like a catch-22. I tell my son was raised in a restaurant. I would have servers tip my baby out for feeling like sugar caddies or salt and pepper shakers. So he grew up in the business too, 5 or 6 years old, standing on milk crate washing dishes. You got to work too.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It was so bad at one point I worked so much that the school bus driver would literally drop my son off at my job.
Wow. They already knew. We're just going to drop you off.
Yeah, I go have a conversation with him before school even started. I'm like, look, I know that this ain't on your route.
How long were you doing that?
About 15 years. So. My son's a 21-year-old man now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have a deep dish conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the humanities of it, right? We all had our own unique experiences, which shapes our perspective, right? And if we don't ever have a conversation about that, right? How do we know where these kind of perspectives are coming from, right? But that's also about being curious and allowing people to be their brave self and have these conversations. So shout out to Chef Star May. She's amazing. Her food is amazing. But I love it. I love learning about those things. Again, I'm exploring. That was the first time me and her has had a sit down conversation like that. Mm-hmm. Period. And so from that conversation, now we're building. We've talked plenty more, but finding out that she has a felony. Who would have thought? Yeah. In a weird way, done prison time, right? Yeah. And so those type of things. I think I just love diving deep, but I love even more people feeling comfortable to share those things and open up.
But that's it. You have to create the environment for people to open up and discuss some of these very difficult, very personal things that other folks may try to attempt to judge them on. How do you go about creating that environment when you're talking with folks?
Man, not being adversarial. Not being adversarial, going in with no kind of like preconceived notions about a person. Like, I'm no better than any of the guests that I'm sitting across from. They giving me their time to come and speak to me with so I thank them, right? And so the least I can do is provide a space where they can be themselves, they can be brave, they can be comfortable. And I don't do no curveball questions. I'm not here to like make a viral moment. I'm not here to make a headline. I'm here to really take a deep dive into who you are and what you think about social change and what you believe we can do to solve these issues, these social constructs that we all affected on a certain level. So, and I just be myself. I'm not trying to be nothing that I'm not, and again, like, I'm just being curious and I'm exploring and I'm letting it go as far as the guests will let me go.
I mean, these days that's kind of revolutionary in the middle media space, being authentic. You know, do you see like a lack of authenticity out there?
It's a void. Man, it's a void of authenticity. It's a void of exploring. It's a void of really amplification of solution-based discussions. Like, and it's ridiculous. But that's why I think shows like this one, shows like mine, and a few others that really like take time to be authentic and let people be themselves, but also really open up the conversation to when you talk about social change and what can we do to combat these things, like are more critical than ever. And they don't have to be sensationalized celebrity people that's guiding these things, right? And I think that's one of my pet peeves that I'm really like, it's a pet peeve of mine when I see or when I know like there may be somebody that's conducting or moderating a conversation about social change, but that's not the life that they live on any type of way, form, or fashion. So I think it's disingenuous. It's not authentic at all. Right, and they doing it maybe because they got a name, which is fine, but that's not like, this is serious business. This is people that really have done this.
These are
for
people's
years.
lives, right?
Yeah, and so like to try to commercialize it in that way, like, and so that's why I have a range of guests too. That's why I like it's gonna be. I don't care if you picking up trash with your hand and you doing that to create a cleaner community, because we know cleaner communities mean safer communities. You can be on the show. Yeah. Like you can work a 9 to 5, like, and that's why like I want to keep it rooted in that for myself and the grassroots, and like, yeah, so it's a void of that. It's definitely a void of that.
And that's a void that, like you said, you are filling, and that's what we're attempting to fill. Yeah. But you also build trust with your audience when you are authentic, genuine, and you see the humanity in other people. Why is it so important for you to build that trust with your audience members?
Yeah, I think it's important because they taking out their time or their day to hear, watch, and be engaged with me. So the one thing I have to do, right, is be honest. Right, the one thing I have to do is be fair and make sure that I'm really intentionally trying to explore all the voices of social change that are possible, right? And I think that's only fair by community. Now, like, and that's what I market. Like, that's what I advocate. And so for me to do anything different, it'd be distrustful. Why would they believe me? But for some odd reason, people trust me. People want to open up. People want to come on the show, and I appreciate that. And I'm truly grateful because I'm not an expert in quote unquote social change. I've done the work and I'm continuing to do the work, but it's a revolving door. I'm always want to do this work and learn. And so when I'm talking to you or another guest, I'm learning. I don't come in with all the answers. I just come in with my perspective based on my lived experience and the things I've done, and I run with that. But I want to be taught something different too. I want to go into a conversation like, wow, I never thought about that. Let me marinate on that. And again, not being adversarial, not saying, oh, my way is better than your way, right? Because I think you jumping off a cliff with that. And again, in this space, it's really easy to do that. It's really easy to criticize. And if people can just stop doing that and not be judgmental. People are trying. Now, I'm going to give you a hand clap for trying. If you're trying to create some type of social change in your community, you get a hand clap for me, because there are people that are not trying, and those be the same ones a lot of times. They got a whole lot of tweets, a whole lot of posts, but like a whole lot of memes, but like, are you trying? And so anybody out there is trying to make change in their community, I applaud you. But I always tell people, you got to start with yourself, your community, then the world.
Let's talk about your book.
Yep.
Deep Dish Conversations. You know, I had the honor and privilege of discussing it with you when
Yeah,
it
you
was
did.
released.
You
It was
did.
blessed. You know, thank you again.
You blessed it. Thank you.
For
Appreciate
thinking of me for doing that. But how did you decide what conversations you wanted to include in the book?
It was hard. It was tough.
I bet.
And know why it was hard? Because I was having more conversations as I was writing the book.
Okay.
And so, so it was new conversations happening while I was trying to go through these 13 ones that I picked. And so it was tough, but I tried to be intentional about kind of wanting people to explore different voices, making sure everybody in the book didn't have the same perspective on the same topic, making sure like, hey, there's different approaches that people feel that all live in this city. They're all doing great work, but they're doing it in different ways.
I mean, you had a lot of different folks. You had comedian Josh Black, who's been on the show. You had anti-racism educator Tim Wise, who's been on the show. And you had Will Acuff from Corner to Corner, the former CEO and executive director of Corner to Corner. You had a variety of voices. Were you ever on the fence with a decision of somebody to include?
I was on the fence the whole time because you don't want to leave. If I could, I would put everybody in. But we talking about
encyclopedia.
Yeah, you talking about encyclopedia. You talking about, at that point, I think I had at least over 100 episodes at the time. You got to think about the workload. Like, I only been doing this since 2020, and at that time, I was averaging like 2 or 3 episodes a week. So I was like, at the end of the year, I had like 70. Like, it was crazy. The numbers are ridiculous, right? But that's how passionate I was about it, about how much I cared. But I wasn't even thinking about a book. I wasn't, I was thinking about, I want to do this work. Like, type of impact I can have. So it was definitely tough. But shout out to everybody that was in the book. All the guests I've ever had, couldn't have been possible without community. And I always try to bring community with me, whatever I do.
You also have the show, A Slice of Community, that you produce with Nashville Public Television. How is that different from what you're doing on Deep Dish?
And it's on PBS. We going national, baby. Nah. But it's a little different, I think, when you're on camera. Just in general, and you have guests, and you're even more confined to the time and things. So it's a little different format, but at the same time, it's not. I wouldn't say it's not as raw as Deep Dish Conversations, just because of the system, the PBS system. But it's the same approach, creating consistent space where we can talk about solution-based ideas, projects, and have solution-based discussions to solve these social constructs, right? And having guests on that bring a different perspective. And it's more geared to Middle Tennessee, right? That Middle Tennessee area, and talking about, hey, how can we make better communities, what we can do, but hopefully inspire and encourage the listeners and the watchers to be engaged and do something in their community.
So what's up for the future? Will you stay in Nashville? Take your message national or global?
Look, we're going global. First of all, I'm already global. I've been global. You know what I'm saying? I've been global, but most definitely Nashville, I'm going to carry Nashville wherever I go, right? I'm always want to be a representative of Nashville. I'm a product of Nashville, right? But I'm definitely going global. I think social change is global, and that's what I learned from my travels. And so doing it here first and starting home was essential to me, right? And doing that and getting something developed here and starting a digital publication of Deep Dish Conversations here that's geared towards specifically Nashville and Middle Tennessee area, and then building that out and then taking it global to other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And so just imagine a mixture of Anthony Bourdain and Mike Rowe with Dirty Jobs, and then just centered around community and social change, and put me in it, who's flyer, who's just, more dynamic, and blacker, and putting that out there in the universe for it to do. But for me, it's just crucial to bring community in whatever I do. And explore the world, and I encourage anybody that can explore the world, whether it's going to another county, another city, another state, wherever they is, another province, whatever it is, that's essential. And that's why I say I'm an explorer, because for me, social change is always going to be there, but people to explore it in a different way, to garner different perspectives, is equally as important. And so, and that's me. And that's why, I can't be in a box. I'm too much of an explorer. I'm gonna go explore something. Trust me.
All right, to wrap this up, I want to come back around to where we started a little bit. Some people can't bring themselves to have a conversation with others because of beliefs, views, stances. And, things ain't going to change until we can have conversation first.
Right.
How do you advise the people, to bring ourselves to be able to talk to others about the sensitive topics and serious issues while honoring each other's humanity? We got just about a minute.
Well, listen. Don't talk. Just listen. Sometimes, it's a difference of of doing nothing and staying still, right? There's a difference, right? Sometimes listening is just you staying still. You know, you respecting somebody's opinion, you respecting somebody's perspective, and you don't have to say you don't agree. Just listen and digest that. And I guarantee you, if you just listen to people's ideas and not going there already trying to be combative, like, community be stronger, but their relationship can also be stronger. And not saying that you're going to build and do great things together on everything, but just listen to people and just respect their life experiences as long as they being respectful to yours. Now, you got some people, I think, who just going to be maybe extreme one way or another, but that's life. But just be respectful and listen.
Jerome Moore is the host of Deep Dish Conversations and A Slice of Community, and the author of Deep Dish Conversations, Voices of Social Change in Nashville. You know, a lot of times they say that genuine energy really engenders a wonderful vibe. I have to tell the listeners, Studio A at Nashville Public Radio is glowing. Jerome, it's been an honor, my friend. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank you, and I appreciate everything that y'all doing.
And thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of WPLN News and Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Char Daston. Our senior producer is Steve Harouche. Michaela Elias is our technical director. The masterminds behind our theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. The conversation doesn't end here. Tweet us at This Is Nashville. Find us on Instagram and tell us what you want from our show by filling out our quick survey online. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Lake Aluna. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.